This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 545 for February 25th of 2021, redesigning auto shows to bring them back to life. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Hey, Gary.
John, good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Hey, so you were driving the new Bolt EUV today.
Yes, and I cannot tell you about it.
Darn it.
Although I can say, and I mean, because this is public knowledge, that it does have Super Cruise, and I know that you've talked about Super Cruise on the show before when you were driving a Cadillac CT6, I believe.
That's right.
That's right. And so this was in the Bolt EUV, and it's quite an experience.
Maybe next week we can talk about it. The embargo will be off by then.
Yeah, it'll be off on Monday.
Okay, great.
So that was one of my few ventures out of the house, out of this room, and to take advantage of the opportunity to drive that vehicle. And so good on GM. I mean, they're really putting out another electric vehicle, putting in technology that they've developed as they promised they would, and so maybe we're going to see this all rolling out in a good way for that corporation.
Yeah.
All right, so you've been on the money on so many of these over the last few weeks. If you guess this one, I am telling you what you need to do is immediately leave the studio, get on an airplane, fly out to California, and get on Jeopardy. Okay.
I know you're gonna try. You're gonna stump me.
This. If you know this, I'm just All right. Something happened in the state of Oregon in 1919, and it's sort of in keeping with what you would sort of imagine Oregon being somewhat of a different political environment, social environment, and it has to do with the auto industry.
Wow, different social. Because when you said Oregon, at first I was going to guess that this was the first transcontinental drive of an army convoy, but I don't think they ended up in Oregon. So you stopped me, Gary.
Wait. All right. So in 1919, on this day, Oregon became the first state to put on a gasoline tax. It was a 1% tax that they added, and it was used for infrastructure to build roadways. So
wow, first gasoline tax ever. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Did not.
I have it. Okay, I have another one. This would be a quick one. Okay, so this has to do with General Motors, Daimler Chrysler, Ford. They got together and announced something that they were doing, that they were collaborating on in 2020. So today in 2020, or not 2020, 2000.
2000. General Motors, Daimler Chrysler, and Ford.
Mm-hmm. And it was going to revolutionize everything.
Oh, that, yeah. Wait. What was, yeah, no. This was, I think, the brainchild of Iñaki Lopez, right? This is their reverse auction, what they called a Dutch auction thing. What was the name of that thing?
Covasant, right. Yeah, I remembered it. It was a spectacular failure. Apparently it still exists out there, though. Okay, so it's
in totally different form. Different form.
Yes.
Suppliers absolutely hated it. In an auction, you try to bid up prices. You try to outbid somebody else. The way that Covasant was doing it, the Dutch auction, is you try to undercut everybody. And the idea behind it, literally, was to get this bidding frenzy going in a downward spiral to nothing.
Yeah. So, and it was also the beginning or their ostensible beginning of the digitization of everything. And, it's just somehow that just didn't catch on because if there had been the opportunity to SPAC it, they might be zillionaires right now, but oh well.
Well, any kind of deal like that has got to be win-win. If it's win-lose, it was win for the automakers, lose for the suppliers. At some point it gives out. So if you make it win-win, things can really do miracles for you.
Okay, so I'm giving you the Covisint one, the 1% tax, no, but as I say, if you got that one, that would have been just bizarre.
Hey, let's bring in our friend and colleague, Mark Phelan, car critic for the Detroit Free Press, joining us today. Hey, Mark.
Nice to see you both.
Good
to see you. Things well in your world?
Very good, thank you. Very good. I am one day behind you in my personal time zone. I'm driving the Bolt EUV on Friday.
So I'm not going to tell you anything about that because, I'll just, burst your bubble.
And break the embargo, which God knows we wouldn't want to do.
That's true.
Hey, let's bring it today driving a VW electric car, so I'm delighted the two of them lined up together. Just the VW ID4, which is also embargoed till Monday, sadly.
Yeah, too bad. But next week we'll talk about those cars. Yeah. But right now, let's bring in our special guest for the day, Rod Alberts, the CEO of the Detroit Auto Dealers Association. Rod, great having you back on the show.
Hey, thanks, John. It's I think it's been since maybe over a year ago, so since COVID started. So thanks for having me. I think I was at the studio last time in.
Yeah, no, if you were in the studio, it was probably at least a year ago. That's right, because we haven't done anything in the studio since almost a year now. I think we did some shows up through mid-March, and that was that.
Yeah,
right.
So Rod, your last several months have been rather challenging. For those who don't know, you're the man who organizes the North American International Auto Show, and so tell us about that experience. So you guys were making a huge change, and then COVID hit. So just give us some background.
Yeah, if you'd have told me I'd be sitting here with this conversation even a year ago, it tells you how quickly things are changing. A little bit accelerated by COVID, no doubt, but just in the industry in general. But if we go back to the last time we had a show back in 2019 in Detroit in January, which we had for many, many years. And all that was to drive car sales in the middle of winter. But realizing that shows are changing around the world, it's no secret with digital world coming into play and different ways of marketing and younger leaders coming into the OEMs, suppliers. It changed our world too. You look around shows in Geneva. I'm not sure where they're going to have another show. They went through a real tough thing with it being canceled the day before. Frankfurt, the Big Daddy shows moving to Munich. That'll be in September this year. And Paris and Tokyo, they've had to reinvent themselves a bit. And actually, Tokyo has taken a longer time to get there. But from our end, we want to stay ahead of the game. We are, the Motor City or Mobility City, whatever you want to call it. And we realized we had to reinvent ourselves too. And it's not incremental change anymore. This is dramatic change, accelerated by the COVID on top of that. So we want to make sure when we came out of this, we had a plan that was in place. And going to June was one of those plans. And in September, which actually worked out pretty well when LA made their move, but having it in a good product cycle with cadence of product, but also having it outdoors so we can do more engagement with product and millennials and getting people in cars. But all that then kind of get muddled up again because of the COVID situation. But opening up to where we are now, to going into this year, we went through, it's a business decision too. Think about having a show canceled 3 months before you're going into all the investment we put into last June. It was time to take a look at and make sure we didn't make an error of such again where it's out of our control. You have something that could be canceled or people just can't go to it. And from our standpoint, it's better to have something outdoors, engagement with a good possibility of having it occur. Now, I don't think a pandemic's a great thing to have, but by the same token, I think Churchill or somebody once said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And you have to take that, embrace what you have, and create something new. So I'm trying to make a long story short, but what ended up happening is we have another asset, not just downtown Detroit and what we have with TCF Center, but we have another asset there in Pontiac with that track that's right here in the community. And an easy access for a lot of the people who live in the region and actually beyond. So that opened the door for Motorbella. And if you take a look at this, it doesn't look big on the sheet of paper here, but that's 87 acres of space. And the area of track is 1.5 miles. So we can take all that and create showing off technology and autonomous cars, electrification, a lot of things that the public and the industry has not seen live from the competitors or just with people that don't really realize and getting used to that kind of product on the street and what they sound like, what they look like. So we're going to have this full senses experience where you can come out and whether you're a media person or you're with the public that just wants to take it in, we want to create something new, different, and stay ahead of the curve and it'll be a leader in the industry and make something happen. But it's kind of again, natural place to create something of that nature, and it's right here in Detroit and not too far from where most of us live. So that's a long story to get to the end game of Motorbella, but it's a lot of fun. We actually had Motorbella in mind before the pandemic on a supercar side, just to get the Lamborghinis and Ferraris. But heck, why not open it up to other brands and products and show off an autonomous car?
And Rod, so Motorbella is taking place in late September this year. Is the plan then to have a more traditional venue like the TCF Center in downtown Detroit a year later for an auto show that returns to that kind of a floor plan? Or is Motorbella what you're doing going forward?
No, what I see happening, in fact, I've got something that probably this summer that we're going to do to raise some money for charities and that type of thing. That'll be vehicle involved with a backdrop. So as I say that, the whole idea is we're a city that can have multiple events, multiple opportunities. I'm not looking for big investment from manufacturers. We're a dealer-driven show with the support of the manufacturers, and we can do some things on a smaller scale too, even with charities in the community, which is what we're all about anyway. But given the fact that what you asked about TCF, in 2022, there will be a show in Detroit. And it will be
city of Detroit, you mean? In
the city, yeah. It probably won't be the same show that we've been used to because, again, we were looking to go outside anyway. We're going to take the parks in downtown. We want the engagement. The mayor has also said, Mayor Duggan wanted to open up the streets in a way that, or close them down that we can use them for different things to show that we are a future-minded mobility city that is going to take this and embrace the technology. So from our end, what we'll do is take more of it into the city, which we're built for, with having a convention center right downtown. But I want to say too, knowing that we have a track that it's not an hour away like you have at Goodwood in London, or it's not at MIS, it's 3 hours away. You got a track right here. Why not take all the assets we have, create things that are good to bring people in from around the world, around the city, around the region, and show off all those companies that a lot of them are right here in Southeast Michigan. A lot of the technology, the startups. It's a good primer, but then we can bring in people from other countries and companies that do the same thing. In my mind, we need to be a stage to the world, but we're not going to be the same stage we were before. And we got to look at it differently. And if you if you think not changing is the answer, one thing's for sure, you're going to be left behind. We all know that.
Yeah,
so
that's for sure.
I'm doing all the talking here, but I apologize for that. But I do think that what we have here is something exciting for Detroit, and we can take advantage of the assets of track and do. And by the way, what I like to do is show the video. Then I'll definitely shut up here for a minute. But I got a video I can show you. Then you can ask more questions. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. Can we run that video now? Do we have that ready to go?
I think we do.
It's like you got a little bit of everything in there.
Well, think about it. The way this will be set up is we have an area for off-road tracks too. So you can get into a Bronco or a Jeep or whatever Wrangler and take it up the side of a hill or rocks. Then we'll have an area to put an autonomous car out there or electrification of some sort. And then you can also have a Lamborghini going around the track. The beauty is we can put 6 or 7 cars on the track at a time. We can have press conferences on a stage, and we're going to have grandstands. And if you really look at the whole big picture, we can engulf and encapsulate everything that is about mobility and bring people together in an area that's a little bit like Goodwood, but not from the old car standpoint, from the new car and the future where the cars and vehicles are going.
A key part of the Detroit Auto Show was your automobility, where you were able to display all these startups getting into new things like autonomous vehicles. Is that still part of this?
Oh, absolutely. The beauty of taking what we had and the partners that we have 150 partners in automobility alone. I thought it would take 2 or 3 years to sell that out 4 years ago. It sold out in the first year. So it tells you all these companies are out there. They want to get around the OEMs. They want to be around the industry. And if you bring them all together in one place in a festival atmosphere and showing off their product, as we did, we're just transferring that same equity, what we're doing out here. Now, keep in mind, a lot of those companies will still be a part of what we do at TCF in the future, and then what we do at Motorbella too, but they have a different element to the way they'll show them off. But again, you got that urban setting, you got a little bit of the rural setting and we can do a little bit of everything. And again, I put on events, so it's natural for me to get my team and put them together. And as long as you guys show up, I know I'll have a new product out there for you guys to drive.
So Rod, if June 2020 had come off, my notion of it was going to be a South by Southwest like event focused on the automobile and mobility and things like that, and that you would use TCF as basically an anchor point where there would be the usual car displays, but then from that point out, going out throughout the city, and there would be other stages and venues and events and autonomous vehicles rolling around. Yeah. Okay. So my question is Motorbella still going to have some sort of anchor wherein people will come and just, kick the tires on the cars rather than drive the cars around on the track or through the mud?
No, there will be displays. If you look at the layout that we have, there'll be displays. Half a mile of the track will be committed to a linear display setup. If you see where the wide area would be, in the middle of that is a 90,000 square feet of space for manufacturers. But that whole area, that half mile, will be set up for boutique displays or hard surface and hard wall displays. It won't be to the elaborate look you probably would find at TCF Center. That would be indoor. It might be along what you'd find at a Daytona race, where you have the 40 by 30 boutique setup with hard floors and hard walls. And again, that would be the prime area for looking at vehicles and product with cars around it. I expect to have probably 500 cars that'll be spread out amongst the areas, so you can kick tires and see the cars just like you would an auto show. The difference is now you can put people in the cars, engagement, of course, safety in mind with the pandemic and whatever might be during September. But we want to engage the product and the people and put it together. And that's really what it boils down to. There's so many new things out there, and manufacturers not just showing off design of cars anymore. It's more about the mobility and technology aspects. So that's kind of our game. And downtown, the same. We had a location for the German house, we called it. More of a beer garden for you guys, I figured it would be.
You got that right.
Yeah, but the firehouse is gone.
But the beauty was, right, well, same idea, but we were going to, here we are in the nice weather. We put up a tent outside this building that's right across from TCF Center, same idea. And we could put 5 or 6 cars out there, either by the dealer or by the OEM from the German companies. And at some point, it's not about the big displays anymore. It's about the product. And we can put people in cars to do test drives. Now, I'm not going to combine the beer and the test drives, but the whole idea is you can do things you've never done before, especially in good weather. And we got a beautiful month in September. So whether it's downtown or whether we're doing something in Pontiac, why not show off in the best month of the year? So, and by the way, one last thing you had on the countries, we have interest from several countries around the world that are big into mobility, and we're going to have all that. We're in touch with them now. They're thinking about bringing companies in from their countries to be a part of both what we do next year and with Motorbella this year.
And speaking of Motorbella again, Rod, the Detroit auto dealers put on Motorbella and the auto show, obviously. That's a lot of brands. Will you have space at the Motorbella layout for all of the brands to have representation? Do you expect all of the brands to be represented?
Yeah, we had, as all shows have had around the world and around the U.S., there's been attrition with brand participation. I think part of that has to do with cost. My plan is to create more value for their investment, more value for what they put into it. And we're doing that through this whole process of creating things like Motorbella and what we do at TCF next year, which will probably have smaller bills and that type thing and throughout the city. So Again, it's just again we're just making sure what we do is going to be in a positive way. I'm not sure I answered your question, but we're trying to make it in such a way that we can draw the manufacturers and be a part of it, and it's a good return on what they do. Now, for this, we'll have plenty of room. There's about 1.6 million square feet, 1.6 million square feet of space for area for all the activation, not the activation, but the activities and displays. The track is a separate part of that. Okay. So knowing that we have 1.6 million and we got probably at Hart Plaza and TCF Center about the same space combined, it's almost identical. So the beauty is there's plenty of room. We can do 500 cars. We can do 30 brands. And in some aspect, if you take the high-end supercars, they really don't, they're more about the car than they are a display. So you get a Lamborghini out there and then you get a Volt or whatever it may be, they're going to have the way they're set up and they're going to have their own branding and imaging, but it all works. And by the way, plenty of room.
So what's the reaction from the car companies been? Are you getting them signed up?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We're getting a ton of interest because they have to look through a different lens at this, and it's really beyond an auto show. You can call it an auto show all day, but it's really an auto show plus because you got more going on. And they love the idea. They're all about putting people in car seats. So the ride and drive element, seeing electric vehicle or autonomous car on a track, which is a really nice track out there. You don't have to worry about, bumps in the road or whatever, cracks. It's really a nice setup, and they can really show up their product in a positive light. So they're loving the idea, and they're coming in with incredible creative thoughts of what they can do with it. Now think about the off-road too. They can take and put dirt out there where there's dirt already, but they can build their own off-road track. And some of the ideas they've come back with so far are more than I ever imagined. So yeah, you're going to see some fun stuff out there.
Rod, you mentioned the Frankfurt show now is going to be IIA Mobility. That's their official name for it, sure, rather than the Munich Motor Show. Mm-hmm. Now, are you talking to people like that in terms of what they're doing? And so there's a sort of a coordination to make it easier on the OEMs. And I know you're using suppliers are being involved in these things now too, correct?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time over the last year and a half talking with the OEMs and suppliers to see what they're really looking for and what they're wanting to do. Again, things have changed. If you look at the model 2 years ago and what's going to be in a year from now, the acceleration of what we're dealing with is nothing similar to what we saw 5 years ago, whatever it may be. But we're talking to everybody because we have to build it. All we are is a stage provider. We have to build it in such a way that it's usable and user-friendly for the OEM suppliers and partners. And we've been doing tours out there the last 3 or 4 days I bet we've toured with about 80 companies in the last 3 days. So it tells you when they get out there and they see what they can do, it's a game changer. But you're right. The OEMs, everybody has had input because we want to do it in such a way to make it work for them. Number one.
Another question about timing, Rod. All of the auto shows have been moving their dates around in response to the pandemic, obviously. And the Los Angeles Auto Show seems to be the joker in the deck. They keep changing the game. They were the last one to cancel their 2020 show, and they keep moving around in their dates for this year. Mm-hmm. Just a or so ago, they said they're going to try to do a full indoor convention center show in Los Angeles in October of this year. Coming just a couple of months after you decided not to do an indoor convention center show in Detroit at about the same time, does that suggest that maybe what was your thinking when you saw them make that announcement?
Which one, the move to June or the May or the one to later?
The most recent move.
Isn't it November?
Last week's move.
Isn't it November?
It's November.
Maybe, yeah.
And I'm not. I knew they were. I knew in the back of my mind they had to be holding those dates when they, trying to get something in. I think the reason they moved up the first time, it had been so long since they had a show, and they're not a dealer-owned show. They're a privately owned show, so they got different motivations. That makes sense.
Yeah, they need to make money.
Yeah, there you go. And
so the dealers.
Yeah, well, the dealers from our end, we're an association that we put on a show to drive car sales. If you go back to 1907, that was the whole regional, the idea behind it. And it still is a core of what we do. The internationalizing of it was a side byproduct that worked out incredibly for 30 years. and it still will work, but we have to make sure we stay to our core of what we are as driving car sales. And if we do that, and then we also present debuts and product, it's gonna attract Mark and John and all you guys, Gary, from the media world. We'll have that. But by the same token, regionally, and all the shows, 65 shows in the U.S. Now, talking about LA again, going to November, you know, I don't think the pandemic, great. It's going to be, what are we doing, 1 million a day and regarding vaccinations? You know, another 10 or 11 months, and maybe it'll accelerate that we can get 75% of the population. But again, will it be ready for indoor entirely? Who knows that? And in my opinion, knowing that we had another way of doing it this year, which could lend itself to longer term Motorbella and TCF Center combined, why take the chance when you're trying to protect the public and you want to draw the public? And yeah, I don't know beyond why they would move it twice. You know, I moved a couple times, but not that many.
and you're not looking at the move they just made to late fall and thinking, gee, maybe we pulled the trigger a little too early.
You know, we're like a restaurant too. You know, all these outside, you build a tent, you can go in a tent, but you can't go in the restaurant, right? So we're a little bit like that. We can go outside and do things, and people are going to feel more comfortable with that. Plus, they get right in a car or a product if we're allowed to do that. At least see the cars and smell them and touch them. And that's what you guys do every day, and then you present it to the public. Now you can be there with them, and they can see that too. I mean, how great is that? It's a little Da Vinciism there. We got get your senses engaged, you know. So yeah, we're excited about it, but it's just a matter of every show has its own style and own reasons for what they do. LA has always been a little different in their way they handle things, but you know, I don't want to say anything bad. They're okay.
So, Rod, next year, what are you going to do? You're going to do something in June, downtown Detroit, and do Motorbella later in the year, or what's your thinking?
You know, I'm going to play that out for the rest of this year. Right now, you know, I've got dates in September for both. But as long as I kept them separate, what I was going to do this past year was have one weekend for Motorbella for the high-end cars, the supercars and that type of thing. And I know you guys would love that. Come on, put you in a car out there on the track and a LaFerrari, you know. But the other was be having another weekend right after that, and maybe a press day that coincided with that in the middle of the week, that we would have the brands downtown. So in my world, and you know, we want to make sure we do things for charities and all that too. But you're only going to have a charity event do well if the show in the core of what it is does well. In other words, you get the debuts and the product and the media, and if that all goes in line of what your goal is, then you're going to have a great charity preview. But we want to bring it back in such a way that everybody wins, but it's not going to be in the same style that we're used to. You know, if you don't think things are going to change in 30 years, at some point, you know, when I got here a long time ago, I thought, well, this is great. It's a turnkey deal. Well, it's not. You know, we all have to adjust, just like you have. You know,
Rod, let me ask you. At the top of the show, you're talking about how impressions, opinions, and approaches to auto shows are changing generationally. That younger people don't necessarily look at auto shows the way we do, let's say.
Sure.
So, I mean, what are the things that you've learned about that? What are the things that they're looking for? What sort of activities or interfaces or what have you do the younger people look for in an auto show?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I've got a younger staff that gives me thoughts on things that I've never thought about that way before. You know, the logical one is, you know, I've got a daughter that waited a while to get her license. You know, I got people that work here, and all they worry about is if they're plugged in some technology with their car. They don't even care what the car looks like. They just want to get to A to B, and they're Ubering everywhere. Although that's kind of changed now with the pandemic, and it just shows you how quickly you see one trend going, and it's just chopped off, and you got everybody wants to own a car again. So there's a place for auto shows, no doubt. I think the auto show stigma by name is a little bit of a challenge, you know, because it's getting static, and you got to give it some energy. And that's what shows have to go through to figure that out, because you got millennials that have shortest attention spans that want everything right now, and they want to see it right now, and they want to touch and feel it, and they want to buy it right now or lease it or get that Uber or food right now. So you have to realize it's not us anymore that are a little more patient with the way we handle things and want that car. We have to engage the millennials and the younger group and do the best we can. And I learn a ton from my young staff. But I think again, I don't have it figured out. I just know that it's going to have to be a different show, a different kind of way to reach them in their world, which is short attention span and touching and feeling and seeing and engaging with the product.
Yeah, Rod, when you guys had originally talked about doing things downtown and outdoors, there's a lot of talk of bringing in all different kinds of musical groups, bringing in food trucks, craft beers and all that. That's still part of the plan?
Oh yeah, get ready. We're gonna load up on all that. It'll be a different, at Motorbella will be a little different because we'll have food trucks and all that out there, because I think festival atmospheres people are pent up and they want that. They like that feel. And we can do the same thing in downtown Detroit, especially the way that the city's built with that Parisian spokes going out, and you got restaurants everywhere, and we can engage that. So yeah, we're gonna have the food trucks and the entertainment. I got the entertainment left over from this past time that we never used, so I've got them in the back pocket right now. I just can't tell you who they are, But I know this much: whenever I want to go out and get somebody a little bit older, like the Righteous Brothers, everybody makes fun of me, and then I got to go get Dorello or whoever these younger folks. But there's great local entertainment too. But a picture around that half-mile track up at M1 this year that we have at different locations. Some great background Italian music and that type thing too, and do some different bands that could come out and play. There's no end to it all, and I'm excited about it because we can do things again in the city with the embracing with the partners we have to do things like nobody in the world has ever done, and I'm pressing forward hard and strong to make sure we do it the right way and not and pull out all the stops. We want to do it right. Katie barred the door, right?
Hey, look, we're going to have to wrap this segment up. I think that's a good note to end it on. I'll be there. I promise you, Rod. This sounds really interesting. I'll definitely be there.
Yeah.
We all will.
Well, again, we you guys are great partners, and I know we work with NACTOY and all that with you guys. We'll keep working with you. Again, I believe in what you've done and then worked with us and over the years. And I want to impress you guys. I want to get you out there and put you in those cars and get ready for the LaFerrari.
It's a deal. Okay, real good. Thanks again, Rod. We'll have you back, maybe around that time too, and we'll talk more of what's going on.
Okay, John. Thanks again. I appreciate your time too.
Okay.
Real good.
Stay well.
See you, Rod.
Thank you.
Bye.
We're going to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Bridgestone, and we'll be back very shortly to talk about more things going on in the automotive industry. All right, we're back. So what do you guys think? I mean, this whole Motorbella thing might be a blessing in disguise, Try something totally different, new. And who knows, maybe we end up with two, more traditional like downtown kind of auto show, something totally new and different out at the M1 concourse.
Well, and Motorbella seems to be as close as anything gets to foolproof for this year. I mean, even if the pandemic is still a pretty big concern, it's all outdoors and they can limit access, things they couldn't do if they had stuck with the indoor downtown setting. So looks like a good plan to me. I'll be real interested to see what they do next year, assuming that they have both going on sort of bookending weekends, as Rod was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good idea. I think, as Mark indicated, because of, the conditions in terms of the pandemic, and even if it's winding down, people will still be hesitant about cramming into a convention center, as is the case at the normal auto show. I mean, I just wonder about things like, okay, if you're going to want to take, if you're a normal person attending the show, not one of us, and you want to get a ride in a Jeep Wrangler, is this going to be like a line at Disney World waiting to get in that thing, or to get into a fast car? I mean, you're going to be waiting in line for a long time, and getting back to the issue of people having short attention spans, I think that would not play well, which could be problematic for them.
It's funny, though. That's what it's like when they've done the roadkill nights out at the same facility, Dream Cruise Week, and people stand in line for longer than I would have thought possible to go for a drifting ride in a Hellcat or something like that. So, yeah, I'm less worried about that, frankly.
You know, one thing Disney does that I think is very clever is you can reserve a spot in line. So you say, I want to go on this ride. They give you a time, 2:30 in the afternoon. You show up at 2:30, boom, you're in. So you don't have to wait in line. But it's a way of scheduling things for people. I don't know if they charge a premium to do that or what, but maybe there's something like that that prevents you from having to stand in line for, 3/4 of an hour just to experience something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, so I think we can only wish them the very best, and and for all of these cities and organizations that had to cancel shows because of the coronavirus. I mean, it's just really upended that whole thing for so many. And as you mentioned, Geneva may not even come back again. I mean, it's very, very unusual. One of the things that occurred to me was when he mentioned Daytona, and I was thinking, racing got very, very expensive, and they had to find ways to reduce the cost of participating at, say, Indy. And it seems that show organizers have to think the same way to reduce the risk for the amount of investment that a company puts in, and makes it more accessible to them to want to come. And maybe if you have these limited booths, as he was saying, 60 by 40, that might be the way to go.
Good thought there, Gary. Hadn't considered that, but you're right.
So speaking of money, and Mark, you just mentioned that you were driving an electric car today. We'll be driving an electric car tomorrow. I drove an electric car today. John will be driving an electric car next week. I mean, and one of the things that I spotted this week was that Hyundai, on a global basis, is recalling 82,000 electric vehicles, and this is estimated to be costing them $900 million. Okay, this is basically $11,000 per car. Okay, now so here's my question to you guys. Okay. If we have an ordinary recall of an internal combustion powered vehicle, odds are you don't have to replace like the whole powertrain, generally speaking, right? But I mean, here you have this situation where they're replacing batteries, which are the most expensive part of an EV, and is this not going to be a big challenge for OEMs going forward?
I would say so, but honestly, I think the comparison you draw is the accurate one. I mean, you spend as much time and money getting the battery right as you do getting the engine and transmission right, so that you don't have to replace 80,000 of those one day. I mean, there are fewer parts involved and greater reliability in many of them, we're told. So that should be an offsetting factor, but you really better get those parts right, and especially if it's the battery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I mean, this is an ongoing issue with electric cars. Remember, even the plug-in Chevrolet Volt with a V, as in Victor, had battery issues too. So this is a big challenge for the industry. And Gary, the numbers that you quoted there, that's enough to set your hair on fire. A recall that costs you $11,000 a car? Yow, that's crazy. And Mark, Detroit Free Press, you guys had a front page story this week, last couple of days, of how one of Workhorse's trucks burned to the ground. This is
Lordstown, actually.
Pardon?
Lordstown.
Or Lordstown. Lordstown, yeah, because their R&D center is actually just a couple of miles from the studio here.
Right.
But and I know it's a prototype, and that's why you build prototypes, to figure out where the problems might be.
No, not for them to burn to the ground, though.
But I mean, the only thing left was the body in white. I mean, it burned everything on that truck.
It was a shell. That was an impressive vehicle burn.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, they're doing everything they can to say, oh, this was hand built. Oh, we know what went wrong. Oh, it could never happen again. But again, that's exactly the kind of stuff that automakers say when an ignition fails and a car catches fire in somebody's garage. So I mean, I feel like the issues are the same. The potential cost, the how expensive the most expensive parts are is different. But perhaps I'm being Pollyanna-ish, but I don't feel like the basic dynamic is changing. It's just what parts and how many parts they've got to make sure they get right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, to Hyundai's credit, I mean, they're going straight forward. And I don't know if you guys saw this week, they introduced the Ioniq 5, which will be part of the new Ioniq sub-brand of electric vehicles that will be coming out of Hyundai. I guess Ioniq will be set up as a standalone, sort of the way that Genesis became a standalone. What a sensational looking vehicle that is. Did you guys see that?
Sure did. I mean, it's really cool. It's got a retro look to it, and yet it comes off as modern at the same time. And I was so pleased to see that they didn't go with a big.
I've lost John's audio.
Oh, you did? Whoops.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay. And now I can hear both of you again. I'm sorry.
Okay.
For a minute there, I couldn't hear you, John. Sorry.
Yeah, that's modern technology, Mark. This is why we live in the future.
Yes.
No, what I was just saying is the Ioniq 5 has a retro look, and yet it's very futuristic too, very modern, very crisp. And the one aspect that I like so much about it is it does not have one of those big garish faux grills, because that's been one of my pet peeves. Electric cars don't need grills. And to me, it's the epitome of lazy design to think, oh, we have to have our traditional grill there. Well, so if you look at the prior Ioniq or the Kona, they've got that trapezoidal grill that Hyundai's been using for years, which, by the way, so has Ford and so has Subaru. But nonetheless, they just walked away from that completely to create a new look. And that's a gutsy move. I really like it.
Well, and it's funny talking about your grills and the fact that you don't really need them anymore. One of the things Volkswagen told me before I drove the ID4 is to take a look at the front end, because they feel like they have sort of mirrored a little bit of the look of the front of the original Beetle, because they didn't have to be a grill there either, because it was an air-cooled rear engine. And they're trying to get a little bit of that same sort of curve and headline lights and brand logo look there.
So speaking of batteries, Jim Farley came out and he basically said that there needs to be the capacity in the United States to build batteries. I think perhaps part of this goes back to the issue that has been roiling in the news lately about how LG Chem, which makes batteries, took SK Innovation, which is another Korean company that makes batteries, to court in the International Trade Commission, basically saying that there was a violation of intellectual property. SK Innovation will be providing batteries for Ford for the F-150, and the ITC said, okay, you can't bring in batteries for 10 years. You can bring in components for 4 years. So here's my question. So Farley is, and I think correctly, saying, hey, there needs to be the wherewithal to make batteries domestically. But I mean, I wonder, hasn't Elon been building those giant plants out there in the West? And isn't General Motors building a giant plant just, 100 miles away from us in Ohio? I mean, is this the responsibility of the government, or is this the responsibility of industry?
I think Jim is trying to fuzz the fact that Ford, got its supply chain tied in a knot by a legal ruling. Batteries will be built close to where cars are built because they're big and heavy, and it costs a lot to ship a finished battery. The batteries that Ford was going to get initially, for the F-150 were going to come from overseas. And I think, Jim is trying to make it sound like there's a big underlying national issue when actually there's a Ford supply chain issue.
I'd say I would argue it's a strategic problem for the United States. Because, look, right here in the state of Michigan, we already have 3 battery plants. We've got A123, we've got LG Chem, which makes batteries out on the west side of the state. And I don't know if they're still going, but there was Dow Cocam up in Midland as well that was making EV batteries for buses and trucks and the like. But here's the issue. So much of the raw materials are still coming from China. Most of the lithium is processed there. Most of the rare earth metals are still processed there. So I don't know if Farley's arguing that, but certainly what the Biden administration is talking about is we need the supply chain in the U.S. as well. Doesn't have to be 100%. There's nothing wrong with buying stuff from overseas. But, if push comes to shove in terms of trade relations or even worse, you don't want to be relying on your enemy to get things that are critically important to keep the economy going. And I don't believe, this is my own personal opinion on my soapbox now, you don't want to give out handouts to companies to do stuff. You have to create a strategy that puts the right policies in place that says, guess what? It's just as cheap to make a fab plant in the United States as it is in Taiwan. Guess what? It's just as cheap to process these materials in the United States as it is in China. So we need things like tax abatements and write-offs and R&D credits and things like that, targeted at elements, at materials and components that are critical. And I hope that's what we get out of these things. Because remember, there was a decade ago, an earthquake and a tsunami in Japan. That disrupted the supply chain. COVID hit. That disrupted the supply chain. Now it's the chip shortage. And the latest news out of Taiwan, by the way, is they're going through a drought. Making chips is very water intensive. So TSMC, the largest fab plant in the world, is bringing in trucks full of water by the truckload just to keep their plants running. Well, these are all sort of things that have got to be taken into a national strategy to make sure that the U.S. economy isn't going to collapse because of some hitch in the supply chain.
But some of what you're saying just comes down to, how do you choose to hand out the money that you're handing out? Do you do it via tax incentives and abatements, which are a good idea, and incentives for the industries that you want to promote are a smart thing to do, or through some other way? But I mean, it does come down to government support, finding a way to support and having a strategy for how to address the whole thing. And we've never been really great at coming up with strategies for any sort of energy source, but we need to fix that.
I think what puts this in perspective, Mark, is remember when Michael Boskin, I believe he was an economist in the Reagan administration, said, computer chips, potato chips, what's the difference?
Yes. We could just have Lay's produce the semiconductors then. Yeah, with Ruffles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, that whole thinking from the 1980s was, it doesn't matter if we offshore all this manufacturing. That's not the future. Well, now, 30, 40 years later, we realize that was a big mistake. So time to figure out a strategy and start dealing with these problems.
By the way, just for your information, Wyoming has lots of rare earths, and so that's the future. Wyoming, you heard it here.
Canada
first.
too.
Yeah, but come on, Canada, really? Come on.
But
Mark.
here's the thing,
we're
Gary.
on this side of the river. Come on.
We've got the raw materials. We've got lithium, plenty of lithium in this country too. All the processing, or 80% of the world processing, is done in China. Same with rare earths. So that's why I'm saying you got to look at the entire supply chain. But enough of this stuff. What else you got there, Gary?
All right. So I'm trying to remember, John. We talked about this. I don't know if we talked about this on the show or we talked about it independent. But the contract for the new mail truck. So it was let and Oshkosh Defense got it, and so they got a contract for $482 million. It could go to $6 billion. Okay, so this is quite a delta there. It seems to me, 482, $6 billion. But anyway, And the number of vehicles could be 50,000 or it could be 165,000. And this sort of gets to the point of what we were just talking about here. So apparently, these trucks are designed such that you can either power it with an internal combustion engine or you can power it with an electric motor. And the postal system said, so Louis DeJoy, who is the Postmaster General, said that 10% of the vehicles will be powered by electricity. And a congressperson asked him, well, why is it not 90% electric and 10% combustion? And he said, we don't have the extra $3 or $4 billion in our plan. Okay, so wouldn't this be a way to kickstart the creation of supply chains that would include batteries if the government were to say 90% of the mail trucks will be electrically powered?
I think you can expect something like that when Biden's electric vehicle strategy is spelled out in more detail later this year, because that kind of vehicle is one of the ones where it's easiest for them to make an impact. They don't go that far. They're charged in a central place, and the government is the purchaser. Plus, have you seen that truck? It is cute as a kid's toy. It's like a set of bug eyes away from being a character in Cars.
I think it looks hideous. I know it's totally practical. I know
you hated Lightning McQueen.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I know all about mail trucks. My first job in high school was washing post office trucks. They paid me 50 cents a truck. But anyway, here's the issue with going 90% right now. The infrastructure is right. It's just not there. I mean, none of the post office yards have charging stations, much less charging stations for dozens and dozens of trucks. And guess what? If you're going to put in that amount of charging at a post office, you better have the juice coming in from the neighborhood, or you're going to shut everything down around it. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's got to be built. I think they were very prudent by saying, look, let's get a truck that can go either way. We're going to start out with internal combustion engines. And over time, as the infrastructure gets built out, sure, then we can start talking about going electric. But if you want to start building those trucks now, it would be an abject failure. So that's why I think they went the way they did.
I disagree,
John. And I think the 90% is just for the first order, presumably. I would imagine that's for a small initial order, because you don't specify how you want everything equipped for a full 20-year contract in the first days.
Yeah. Why not, Gary?
Because did you see we landed that rover on Mars?
Yes.
Did you see we did that? Okay.
Right.
This is what we can do.
Yeah.
Putting in charging stations at post offices across the country, peanuts compared to landing that thing just dead on. So I have faith in technological development.
Oh yeah. Look, the technology's there to do it today. The money is not. Remember that.
The only way the money. Go on. Sorry, John.
No, I was just going to finish by saying, that Mars mission, $2.5 billion for one vehicle to go up there. So, and I'm all for it. I'm all for spending the money. I'm for spending the money to get the post office to convert to electricity. Look at the struggle to try to get Congress to cough up stimulus money right now. Are they going to cough up all this money for the post office? The post office can't even meet its pension obligations.
Oh, don't even start that can of worms. But you were saying just a second ago, what we have to do is invest in the infrastructure to do things right for batteries and production in the supply chain. Why does that not apply to the energy distribution grid as well? I mean, Gary's right. There's none of this stuff that we can't do. We just have to. We just can't let Congress off the hook by saying, "Oh, gee, we don't think you're capable of coming up with a compromise."
Right.
I mean, we have to insist on it.
All right. Yeah. So let's moving from politics to, but we're going to stay with big money here. So Lucid did a SPAC, and $62 billion valuation. Okay,
well, Gary.
Okay. Here's what I don't understand, and I want you to explain why this is the case. Okay. So we had Peter Rawlinson and Derek Jenkins from Lucid on the show late last year. And, it seems what they're doing very remarkable, but that's right. They don't have a car out yet. Okay. And they've pushed it back some. Okay. So this vehicle that was supposed to be coming out at the beginning of this, within this quarter is going to be pushed back further. So no vehicle and huge valuation. And I don't get it.
Well, one thing, it was $62 billion on Monday. Today, Thursday, the actual market cap of the SPAC is $7.7 billion. So a big dose of reality there. But look, it's money chasing opportunity. You've got so much money coming into the stock market now on all the exchanges, as especially a younger generation discovers the stock market. And so everybody's trying to chase what's the next Tesla. Everybody wants to make themselves rich overnight. And they're jumping into all these stocks. The GameStop is the best example of that, where the stock went absolutely crazy as zillions of small street investors jumped into it. And so that's what you got, Gary, is everyone's looking for the next Tesla, wants to become rich overnight, and the money is just pouring in.
So
yeah, I'm with you, Gary. I'm waiting to see their first car.
Well, I mean, and the thing is, and what's also striking to me is the fact that so Rawlinson said on CNBC that it's going to take 5 years because they built a factory in Casa Grande, Arizona, which, I mean, the factory's up and there's machines in it and things are happening inside there. It's going to take 5 years for them to scale to 250,000 units a year. Okay, so I mean, isn't that a long time to? I mean, I don't get it.
I mean, obviously the equations that the people who are investing that kind of money in this kind of company are different from what normal folks like us do. They have got a dozen bets out there, and they only need one of them to pay off because the odds are huge if one of them does.
Right.
So I mean, a lot of people will lose a lot of money on speculative electric vehicle companies, but a few of them are going to make a ton. And I stopped trying to outthink the market a long time ago. That's why I do not buy money in things like Lucid. I will wait to see what they produce.
So another electric car company, and I'm just going to keep shamelessly shilling the show because I mean, it's just, why not? So we had Heinrich Fisker on the show again late last year. So just search, if you haven't seen that show, search for it. It's a good show. And Fisker, very, very clever, I think, in their manufacturing strategy. So they're having Magna build their first car, the Ocean, and now they've cut a deal with Foxconn in China to build a yet-to-be-defined vehicle. This is sort of an asset-light strategy that, they don't own the building. They don't know what's in there. So do you guys think that this is clever, or is I'm just delusional and still confused about SPACs?
Well, it's shifting where the risk is, I think. I mean, the risk goes to Magna or Foxconn. And they've got some guarantees built into the contract somehow. But I mean, I still find it all to be extremely speculative myself.
Look, I think, Gary, what Fisker is doing is the smartest approach of all the startups. He doesn't have to lay out billions and billions to build a plant and a supply chain and all that. He doesn't even have to manage it. Magna's going to manage it. We know that because Magna told us so. And no doubt Foxconn's going to do the whole thing too. Project management, logistics, supply chain management, all that kind of stuff. I think it's a really smart move for a startup to go that route. As I've been talking all along, if you don't go that way, don't go build a big plant. Go find an empty warehouse that's 1 million square feet. Get it for nothing. Start doing it there. See if you can make it work, and then think about growing.
Yeah, we'll see how this works out. I mean, it seems very. I mean, and you think about it. I mean, so Foxconn was one of the companies that had been rumored might be doing the Apple car, right? Because Foxconn produces iPhones, so why wouldn't they? And I just wonder if that conversation was out there, and Henrik said, "Oh, that's very interesting. I think I'll talk to those guys and see if they'd be interested in building cars." Which are slightly larger than these things.
No,
right,
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure that's exactly how it happened. You know, remember Foxcar showed off its skateboard and said,
right.
"Ta-da, we're ready to go." I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure Henrik picked up the phone as soon as he saw that.
All right, so now I'll go back to another show and make a correct. Well, it's an update. So after the Super Bowl, when we were talking about ads, and we mentioned that there was the Jeep ad with Bruce Springsteen, who had been charged with the DUI, and Stellantis had to pull the YouTube video because you don't want to be as Rod was talking about earlier. You know, you don't want to have the beer tent and then have people get behind the wheel. That's just not the thing to do. So what happened was this week, the charges basically were such that Springsteen paid $500 because he was drinking in a closed park, which apparently is illegal in New Jersey. I imagine it's illegal probably here in Michigan as well. I don't know. But so Stellantis can bring the Springsteen ad back. Okay. But in the meantime, Car and Driver contacted the head of the Cherokee Nation and said, how do you feel about this Grand Cherokee? You know, the name, the Grand Cherokee. And so Chuck Hoskin Jr., who is the head of the Cherokee Nation, said, you know, we really think that they should pull that name. Okay, here's my question. Do you think that the people in Auburn Hills didn't see this coming?
God, what a good question. How long has this been an issue that they could have gone and spoken to someone with the Cherokee Nation and say, yeah, what can we do to help? What can we do to tell your story? I mean, this is just trademark mismanagement on a grotesque level, I think.
Yeah, Gary, that's a really good question. You know, my guess is somebody must have thought about it, you know, because with the Cleveland Indians having to change their name, with the Washington Redskins having to change their name, you know, baseball and football teams, somebody at FCA or Stellantis or whatever, Chrysler, Jeep, must have said, I wonder if we're going to get hit with something like that. And everybody,
but apparently they didn't.
Yeah. I think they were just saying, you know, don't anybody say anything. Maybe it'll just blow over.
I mean, there's decades of history of colleges that have Native American names reaching out and working with the tribes and building a relationship based on respect. I mean, it's not like this was unforeseeable. Yeah, no, great point, Mark, and you're absolutely right. There are plenty of colleges that have worked with tribes and made it something very, very positive for both the college and the tribe, and for anybody who learned about along the way. So, no doubt something's going to get negotiated here.
So 2 points. One is I'm an alumnus of Eastern Michigan University when it was the Hurons, because the Huron River goes through Ypsilanti, and the river was named after the Huron Indian tribe. So way back when, the people at Eastern changed the name to the Eastern Eagles. And for the longest time, when I get the solicitation phone calls that were saying, well, you really don't want to give us money? Oh, is that because we changed it from the Hurons to the Eagles? I'm like, why? This is absurd. Why would you care? Okay, so putting that aside, I mean, when I was looking into this, apparently, and you guys remember this. Remember the concept, the Dodge Kahuna? It was like a surf truck that they made. It goes back to 2003. Apparently, back then, about 1,000 people signed a petition in Hawaii saying Kahuna is a holy person. Why should you name this vehicle after that? So, I mean, so it's not like this is a surprise. I mean, it's just, I don't get it. So okay. Is the name Cherokee going to stay on the vehicles, Grand Cherokee and Cherokee, or will they change the name?
It will remain, and Stellantis will come to an arrangement with the Native American nation, I believe.
Yeah, I'm with Mark on that. That's what I think is going to happen. What do you think, Gary?
I think anything could happen because no, you're right.
Portraits and pillage there.
I mean, No, I mean, I say that from the point of view of this. Okay, so you guys mentioned. Okay, so the Cleveland Indians, they really haven't decided what they're changing to. The Washington Redskins has changed their name to the Washington Football Team. Okay, I mean, it's just like,
yeah. For now, they'll come up with
Washington
TBAs.
Okay. Chicago Blackhawks, Atlanta Braves, and Kansas City Chiefs not changing anything. Okay, they're just going straight ahead. Okay, so there's a possibility of saying, okay, mea culpa, we've not done right by you guys, and we're going to change the name, and they're going to come up with, something that's going to be after a mountain or a river or what have you, right? I mean, it'll be, the outdoorsy, and then for the Grand Cherokee L, they can call it something else entirely to put it, into the stratosphere. Or, as you guys say, they could do something with the Cherokee Nation and say, okay, we're gonna create the Stellantis Center for Cherokee Nation Studies or something. But I mean, it seems to me that they're walking a very fine line here. And,
yeah, but here's the difference, and what we got to keep in mind. And I'm not Native American, and they're not going to see it the way I see it. They didn't name Cherokee as a disparaging name. They did it as something that stood for something noble and honorable and outdoorsy and, out in the West, the image that Jeep wants to conjure up. When you've got something like the name the Redskins, I can understand why Native Americans would not like that. In fact, by the way, they don't like the word Indian either because they're not from India. They prefer indigenous or Native American. So we got to, and I'm okay with being sensitive to that. But again, I come back to the fact that, Jeep was not trying to make this as like a warlike or hostile kind of vehicle.
But they were unaware that they were, or they behaved as if they were unaware that they were appropriating somebody else's name and image. It's not a slur. It's absolutely not a slur, which is why I would be very surprised if they drop it. But certainly it is appropriate to recognize that this is somebody's name and image and find an accommodation.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Mark. And that's what I think we all agree is probably going to happen.
All right. So
Gary, can I ask you a fast question, Gary?
You can ask me a long question.
Yeah, you got no idea what I'm capable of. You went to Eastern Michigan University. They
Correct.
were looking for a new name for their mascot. They chose a bird. How in God's name did they not become the Eastern Michigan University Emus? I've always wondered. I would buy one of those sweatshirts.
It's a very good point.
Okay, thank you.
There were clearly people who made that decision that were not as clever as you are. It's my only. It's the only thing I can think about. I mean, what else could be the answer?
Yeah. Okay, you got one last topic there, Gary, or what?
Yeah, I mean, this surprised me. I mean, there's a couple of things. So I was looking at the numbers, sales numbers out of Europe, because why wouldn't I? I mean, come on. I knew Mark was going to be on the show. International man of mystery. And so, yeah, I mean, so the sales in Europe overall in January were down 26%. They were down 32% in Germany. Okay. And this is the thing that really surprised me a lot. You know what the number one selling vehicle in Europe is right now? I should have started the show with this, and that would have really gotten you, John.
Yeah.
Not a clue.
Historically, it's been the Golf, the Volkswagen Golf.
Okay. And so I'll tell you, the Golf in January was at 4. It fell to 4 from 1 to 4. So what's number one?
I'll take a wild swing and say the Tiguan.
No.
Okay.
It's not a Volkswagen product.
Okay. I know another good selling vehicle there has been the Nissan Qashqai. Not that either.
Closer though.
Okay. The Renault version?
No. All right. I'm just going to give it to you. The Yaris.
Really?
The Yaris.
Really?
So that's
well, there
that's
goes
number
the whole Europeans love drivers' cars.
So, so it's Yaris, the Peugeot 208, and the Dacia Sandero.
Wow,
it's the top three, and then the Golf
tough
comes in fourth.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it bizarre?
Yeah, very low price cars. Certainly the Yaris and the Dacia.
Well, it's funny. I've seen a couple of economic outlook stories that are saying that while the U.S. looks like that people seem to think we may be in store for a real bump, after vaccines are widespread, that Europe is looking pretty grim for this year.
Yeah, well,
it seems like
they went into another lockdown, and that I think is the number one culprit for car sales going down as much as they have. But their economy is pretty shaky. They never got as big a stimulus as the U.S. economy got last year. Hopefully we'll get another stimulus, real shot in the arm to jolt this economy back into action, although parts of the economy are doing quite well. But it's real scary to see what's going on in Europe right now. Hopefully this was just the low point and they start growing from there.
They're still stumbling through trying to figure out what Brexit means to all of them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just look at it from the point of view of, okay, the German companies are spending an enormous amount of money on R&D in terms of developing electric vehicles, and you don't hear so much about autonomy from them as we seem to around here. But I'm certain they're putting a significant amount of euros in that sector as well. And how can you afford to do that?
You can afford to do it for about a year, and then you need the revenue coming in, or your bankers are going to be knocking on the door.
Well, and Mercedes is pretty open about the fact that they're going to keep building internal combustion versions of their current cars for as long as they can sell them. So it looks like they're going to milk those and not phase them out as rapidly as I think a lot of people thought they might.
Or they could just get really rich and just do a SPAC. All right, I'm done.
Okay.
Mic drop.
That's right. Well, real good. Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate having you back.
Thank you for inviting me.
We'll do it again.
Appreciate it.
Mark.
And Gary,
see
you and I'll be back again here next week.
Yes, we will. MDX show next week.
Yeah.
Chief engineer for the new MDX.
Yeah, Acura MDX. Okay, everybody. Thank you all out there in viewership land for having tuned in.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.